Coding? For girls, it's just glorified data entry. That was my family's mantra. They actually sold mom's wedding ring to finance my brother's private school tuition. Me? I was literally dismissed at the dinner table. We can't afford the less promising kid. I had to take out a $90 loan, crash on freezing buses, live off stale bread. And then the ultimate betrayal. I found out my brother had secretly wiped out my scholarship project. Fast forward, 10 years of pure hustle. I secretly bought a 60% stake in their company. Now, my entire family is kneeling at my office door. Save the company. 50 employees are going to lose their jobs. Aunt May, the one person who backed you, she'll lose her home. I have 24 hours to decide. Do I save the person who broke my dream, or do I let the one person who saved me lose everything? And trust me, there's a heartbreaking secret that makes this choice even worse. This is exactly what went down in those 24 hours. If you've got a soft spot in your heart for the underdog, hit that subscribe button. Every new video is a chance for us to heal together. We can prove that tomorrow doesn't have to feel like yesterday. I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa. We look like the perfect middle-class family. Red brick house, white picket fence, the whole American dream cliché. But behind those brightly lit windows, total silent war. The injustice was always creeping in. My parents, James and Linda Carter, had solid jobs, dad in banking, mom ran an organic food store. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. My financial future should never have been a question mark. Dylan, my brother, was 2 years younger, and mom and dad's golden boy. He had this effortless smile, straight A's, everything they cherished. He got the fancy private school, the brand new shiny MacBook Pro, and those expensive tech camps in Silicon Valley. Even as a kid, I saw it. The injustice was obvious. Dylan was the shining star, the main character. I was just the dusty supporting role. For Dylan's birthday, it was a whole thing, a 5-tier chocolate cake, all the bells and whistles. My birthday? A cheap box of Oreos rushed from the grocery store. Mom's only comment, keep it down, Natalie. Dylan needs to study. Dylan needs support for his big, important future. Mom snapped when I finally had the guts to ask why everything was so different. I was 7 years old, and I got it. But I learned to bury that heartbreak deep down. The school projects just cemented the blatant favoritism. For Dylan's science fair projects, my parents would both take a PTO day. They'd spend all day helping him engineer these insane lab-quality rocket models. My coding projects, Mom would swing by for 5 minutes during her lunch break. Just a quick, dismissive glance. Coding is just a hobby, Natalie. It's not going to get you anywhere real. That's what Dad said. His voice was flat, like my entire dream was just background noise. The one person who saw me? My Aunt May. She lived in this tiny cottage on the outskirts, just covered in wildflowers. On those summer afternoons, she'd sit right beside me while I hammered out code on my ancient rattling computer. The fan noise was loud, and the air smelled like her mint tea. It was safe. You've got a special kind of fire in your soul, Natalie, she told me. The sun would catch her silver hair just right. Don't you dare let anyone put that fire out. Her hand was warm and steady on my shoulder. Aunt May's place became my safe house, my only refuge from all the BS at home. In her little kitchen, I devoured books, stories about entrepreneurs who beat the odds and made it huge. I started dreaming about my own future, a place where I could actually leave a mark. I desperately wanted to prove my worth. I needed achievements so huge my parents couldn't ignore them, even if they tried their hardest. By high school, I was iron-willed. I had no backup plan. It was this or nothing. I joined every single tech club. I started crushing it at coding and data analytics. My teachers were genuinely blown away. My talent was finally undeniable. In 10th grade, I won the regional coding competition. Mr. Peterson, my teacher, actually called my parents so proud. Sounds nice, Natalie, Mom said. Her voice was totally flat, zero emotion. Just remember to help Dylan with his finance presentation, okay? By 11th grade, I was hustling at a bakery. I worked the counter until midnight. The smell of yeast soaked into every single coat I owned. I was clocking 18 hours a week, but still nailed a 4.0 GPA. I studied on freezing buses. The dim streetlights were my only desk lamp. 2 years vanished into that grind. School, the bakery, the night bus. The smell of flour and sweat became my second skin. It was a constant, bitter reminder of how far I was from mom and dad's perfect American dream. What I didn't get was that those miserable years, the buses, the bakery counter, were secretly forging a weapon. Something the lecture hall only kids couldn't touch, the killer instinct to find the financial angle in any messy data set. And it was about to pay off. Then, one winter night during my junior year of college, I'd just woken up at the final bus stop. My phone vibrated, an unknown number. Congrats, your data project has been selected for $250,000 in seed funding. I read it 7 times. I thought I was hallucinating. That $250,000? That was the first door that opened. The door to freedom, to autonomy. Meanwhile, Dylan was crushing finance workshops. He was the star pupil. Mom and Dad showed up at every single presentation. They threw lavish dinner parties for his minor victories. By the end of high school, Dylan and I both applied to Rockridge University, the most acclaimed school for data science and finance. He was a year younger, but his private school pushed him ahead. We ended up graduating high school together. So despite the age gap, we got our acceptance letters from Rockridge on the exact same day. 2 thick envelopes arrived. My heart was pounding as I ripped mine open. I got in. I screamed across the dinner table. The sheer joy was overwhelming. That Rockridge acceptance was the final proof my endless hustle had mattered. They had no idea that their betrayal was the fire that fueled me to that brilliant graduation day. That fall, I walked into Rockridge with nothing but grit. I'd snagged a full-ride scholarship for data science. It was my ultimate victory. Dad finally glanced up from his phone. His eyes slid past me, like I was an irrelevant pop-up ad. "That's good, Natalie," he muttered. Zero emotion. Total flatline. Seconds later, Dylan burst through the front door. He was waving his letter like a championship flag. "I'm in the finance program at Rockridge," he screamed. His face was pure, unadulterated triumph. My parents switched instantly. Like someone flipped a huge switch. Dad bolted up, beaming. His eyes were lit up with pure pride. Mom grabbed Dylan in a huge hug. Her voice was thick with emotion. "My boy, I knew it. I knew you'd do it." That joy, that unreserved pride they poured into Dylan, the kind I just desperately wanted and been denied, it froze the air in the kitchen. Dinner was totally forgotten. They threw an impromptu celebration. Sparkling wine for them, sparkling cider for us. 2 weeks later, one conversation just ruined everything. It was a rare family dinner. Phones were off. High stakes. "We need to talk college strategy," Dad declared. His hands were clasped. Serious tone. But his eyes were glued to Dylan. Didn't even glance my way. "We've saved for your college since you were born," he told him, bursting with expectation. "Rockridge isn't cheap, but we're covering everything. Tuition, the nice dorm, so you can focus 100% on success." Dylan's chest swelled. He looked like a triumphant hero. I sat there, waiting my turn. I saw Dylan freeze. His eyes darted to mine, then away, like he couldn't handle the disappointment in my face. His smile was forced now. Less victory, more like a cheap mask. Maybe he knew he was holding a gift wrapped in his sister's pain. I really thought they'd saved for me, too. The air got heavy. The silence stretched. It was an invisible wall between us. Finally, I spoke. My voice was shaky. "What about my tuition?" The room temperature dropped. Mom and Dad exchanged this excruciating look, like I'd asked something totally inappropriate. "Natalie," Dad said slowly, his voice low. He was steeling himself. "We only saved enough for one person. Dylan has always shown the most academic promise. We believe investing in him will give us the best return." Every single word was a stab in the gut. Mom reached out to touch my arm. I recoiled. I pushed her hand away and stood up. The scraping chair was a sharp declaration. "I get it," I said. My voice was flat, empty. No tears, no yelling. I walked out and slammed my bedroom door shut. The silence that followed felt different. The acute pain had calcified into cold, hard energy. That same night, my laptop screen glowed with 2 keywords: college scholarships, student loans. The pain was over. The war had just begun. My 4.2 GPA, the regional coding awards, the full ride into Rockridge, it all meant nothing to them. I was never good enough. And in their world, I never would be. The next morning, my eyes were swollen, my body was running on fumes. I faced Mom and Dad in the kitchen. "Why did you save money for Dylan but not for me?" I asked. My voice cracked, but I forced control. Mom sighed. She stirred her coffee. Her eyes avoided mine. Natalie, it's not as simple as you think, she said. Her voice was flat, like reading a prepared statement. We had to make a practical choice with limited funds. But my GPA is higher than Dylan's, I shot back. My voice shook with pain and fury. I've been working for 18 months, maintaining perfect grades. Isn't that proof enough? Dad snapped his newspaper shut. The paper rustled, sharp and cold in the air. Dylan is focused strictly on academics, he pronounced. His tone was stiff. A final verdict. You're too busy with those activities and that part-time job. Besides, Dylan has a clear career path. Your tech ideas are too risky. You never even asked me what my plan was, I whispered. My chest hurt, torn wide open. Listen, Mom cut in. Her voice was soft but clinical. We'll help you fill out the loan application. Plenty of students fund themselves. You'll be fine. The conversation was over. They had made their decision long ago. I wasn't part of the plan. In their eyes, I was less deserving, less promising. I wasn't worth the investment. That weekend, I drove 90 minutes to Aunt May's tiny house outside the city. She was the only comfort I had left. I cried the whole story out. Aunt May listened without interrupting. Her wrinkled hands squeezed mine tight, offering the warmth I desperately needed. My sweet girl, she whispered, gently wiping my tears. Sometimes the worst pain becomes the greatest challenge. Your parents are wrong about you, deeply and tragically wrong. But you have something they can't see, an unbreakable will. Aunt May couldn't help financially. Her meager income only covered her simple life. But she planted a seed of hope in me, the fierce belief that I could rise on my own. I refused to let their rejection define me. The path ahead looked impossible, but I was moving forward. I started mapping out my future. Loans, night shifts, logging every penny in a spreadsheet. Aunt May told me about her grandmother's ring, a family heirloom she saved for important moments. She believed in me when no one else would. Now it was my turn to believe in myself. Her eyes were shining with fierce faith as she held my hands. Promise me you'll go to Rockridge, no matter what, she said, her voice steady. Don't let their limits become yours. That night, I made the call. I would attend Rockridge with Dylan. I would fund myself. I would graduate against all odds. The next morning, I dove into FAFSA forms. Scholarships, grants, work-study programs, and student loans. For weeks, every free moment was spent filling out financial aid applications. My high school counselor, Miss Wilson, stayed after hours to help me navigate the nightmare system. I rarely see this level of determination, she admitted when we submitted the 22nd scholarship application. I scraped together enough for the first year using a combination of federal loans and a private loan co-signed by Aunt May. Next, housing. While Dylan was set up in an upscale campus dorm, paid for by Mom and Dad, I found a tiny, beat-up apartment 40 minutes away. I had 3 strangers for roommates, all found on a housing forum. I applied for every job near campus. 2 weeks before moving day, I locked down 3. A graveyard shift at the dorm office, a morning janitorial gig, and freelance data entry for a tiny shop. I also picked up weekend shifts at a local bakery. It was there I first started seeing how their sales data could be optimized. The contrast was brutal. Dylan went on massive shopping sprees and had a lavish send-off party. I packed my life into old suitcases. The night before I left, Mom quietly left a set of her old bed sheets on my bed, the only silent admission that I, too, was heading to college. On move-in day, Mom and Dad drove Dylan to campus in the family SUV, packed tight with his new gear. My 12-year-old Toyota groaned every time I braked. A lonely sound cutting through the quiet morning. No one offered to check my oil. At the campus gate, as the SUV turned toward the fancy dorms, I drove on alone. Good luck, Natalie, Mom's doubtful voice echoed in my head. It was my final kick of adrenaline. My new apartment was a different world. Peeling paint, constant noise, and silent roommates. Lying on that thin mattress the first night, one question hammered in my brain. Could I survive this? Just as despair started to swallow me, my phone buzzed. A text from Aunt May. My brave girl, she wrote. Diamonds only form under pressure. You are shining already. She reminded me of her grandmother's ring, her promise that she was always with me. Those words dried my tears. I created a minute-by-minute schedule for the weeks ahead. Sleep would be minimal. A social life was non-existent. But I wouldn't sacrifice my education or my future. The financial aid office became my second home that first week. Miss Harper, the assistant director, took a special interest after hearing my story. You are taking on a huge challenge, she told me, her voice serious. But I've seen students like you succeed. Just promise me you'll come find me before things get overwhelming. That promise became my lifeline for the next few months. Then, the day before classes started, I got a random call from Miss Wilson, my high school counselor. She had somehow talked the tech department into giving me an extra $1,200 scholarship. It's not much, she apologized, but the faculty all chipped in. They believe in you, Natalie, she said. That small act of kindness from people who actually saw my potential, it gave me the last piece of courage I needed. As I carefully added that crucial money to my budget spreadsheet, updating it late that night, I felt a shift. My resolve was ironclad now, like steel. Freshman year hit like a hurricane. College freedom was a joke. My reality was a never-ending loop. Lecture hall, library, graveyard shifts, and the budget spreadsheet, my Bible, tracking every single dime earned and spent. Sleep and a proper meal became luxuries I only dreamed about. And then, one cursed Saturday morning, I almost gave away everything. I was behind the bakery counter, face dusty with flour, my uniform stained with grease. The bell chimed. Dylan and his entire finance frat boy crew walked in. These were the same guys I'd blown off last week, saying I was too busy studying. Dylan frowned, staring right at me. She looks familiar. Are you working here? My heart stopped cold. I spun away, furiously wiping down the counter. One of his buddies laughed. Dude, she's the data science valedictorian. You think she's slinging bagels? Dylan just stared for 3 seconds. It felt like 3 years, then shook his head. Nah, must be wrong. They ordered 6 lattes and left. I let out a massive sigh of relief. But when I turned around, my blood ran ice cold. My backpack, the one with my Rockridge student ID sticking out, was sitting right on the counter. And Dylan was walking back. He was holding his dropped phone. You forgot this, he mumbled, his eyes scanning my backpack, then shooting up to me. His gaze lingered longer than ever. He was trying to piece it together. I kept my cool. Pulled my surgical mask higher. Thanks, I croaked, faking a deeper, raspier voice. Dylan nodded but still looked confused. Then his phone rang, and he rushed out. I clutched my backpack, my heart hammered against my ribs. That was the closest I'd ever come to being exposed. And I knew I didn't have many almosts left. The difference between Dylan's life and mine wasn't just clear. It was a chasm. My phone buzzed that night. A text from Dylan. Are you sure you don't work at that bread and butter place on Clark Street? You looked exactly like someone I know. My stomach dropped. I looked around my cramped apartment, took a deep breath, and typed, wrong number. I'm at the library. The typing indicator popped up, then vanished. The reply came, cool. Good, Mom and Dad wouldn't like you working those kinds of jobs. That message felt like a twisted, backhanded warning. I powered down my screen, the lie tasting bitter in my throat. Through his texts and social media posts, I glimpsed his carefree college life. Finance clubs, career fairs, weekend trips home for Mom's cooking. While Dylan's timeline was bright with parties and networking events, mine was just a chain of dry numbers in a spreadsheet. Rent, tuition, books. Every dollar logged, every expense a calculation. But in all that misery, something unexpected was blooming. I wasn't just surviving the data science classes, I was crushing them. All those years of real-world financial planning and work experience prepared me in a way my classmates hadn't. While they struggled with abstract concepts, I applied them instantly to my own complex, high-risk financial situation. Professor Larson, my applied data analytics instructor, kept me after class one afternoon. Carter, your analysis of that retail data set was superb, he said, especially your perspective on resource optimization under constraint. It shows a remarkable level of maturity. For the first time, my hardship was translating into academic advantage. Exhaustion slowly gave way to a growing confidence in my own power. And then, an unexpected friendship changed the game. My roommate, Mia, noticed my insane schedule. She started leaving home-cooked meals in the fridge with my name on the container. One night, I came home totally wiped, and she was still awake. You can't keep doing this, Mia told me straight, putting a mug of hot tea in front of me. You'll burn out before midterms. When I finally told her my whole situation, her face shifted from worry to pure, protective fury. That's so messed up. Consider me your college family from now on. Mia became my safe harbor in the storm. She proofread my essays when my eyes blurred. She made flashcards for my exams. She fiercely protected my study time. When she realized I skipped meals to save cash, Mia insisted on cooking enough for both of us. I grew up believing family takes care of each other, she explained simply. And sometimes, the family you choose matters more than the one you were born into. Mid-sophomore year. Disaster hit. My old laptop, my companion through 1,000 sleepless nights, died with a soft final click right before finals. The screen went black. I didn't just see a broken machine. I saw next semester's tuition. I saw the rent. I saw the numbers on my budget spreadsheet shatter. Everything I'd built was crashing because of one dead machine. Panicked, I ran to the financial aid office, finding Miss Harper. She gave me the brutal truth, then a lifeline. Your academic performance qualifies you for an emergency grant, she explained, and Professor Larson nominated you for a research assistant position in data science. The RA position paid better than the bakery and looked amazing on a resume. Working directly with Professor Larson, I researched data optimization for small businesses. The work hours were flexible, and the intellectual challenge was a welcome change from scrubbing dough. But the real rescue came from a late-night call. My phone rang. Aunt May's voice was on the other end, resolute but thick with unshed tears. "I sold Grandma's ring, darling," she said, before I could stop her. "This is the moment that heirloom was meant for. You use that money to buy a new computer, you hear me?" I choked up, couldn't speak. That ring was her only true possession, everything she had. The money was enough to get a reliable used laptop. It pulled me, literally, out of the quicksand. That night, in the quiet apartment, the click-clack of the new keyboard was the only sound. I coded non-stop. Every fear, every drop of gratitude, every ounce of determination was distilled into the code. I started writing an automated analysis tool, inspired by the messy sales data back at the bakery. That software, rough as it was, optimized their ordering process. It promised a serious revenue boost. The joy was short-lived. That small taste of success attracted big industry sharks. I learned a fast, brutal lesson. In business, no win comes without a fight. But that tool became the foundation of my startup, small, quiet, and built on the fragments I'd collected. The nascent idea was about to step into the real world, where the scrutiny is harder than any line of code. More importantly, Professor Larson genuinely invested in my future. "Have you ever thought about entrepreneurship?" he asked one afternoon. "Your perspective on how limited resources drive innovation is incredibly insightful." The bakery idea, rooted in my Des Moines observations, finally took root. Using my data science and coding skills, I built automated analysis software for local small businesses. Working late into the night, I built the interface and developed service packages based on the needs I observed in my RA research. By the beginning of junior year, the software helped the bakery increase revenue by 20%. That was enough for me to quit the freelance data entry. I kept the RA position for the mentorship, not the pay. Between the software revenue, the research stipend, and my loans, I reached a fragile financial stability. The budget spreadsheet was still updated nightly. As the software grew, so did my confidence. In my data modeling classes, I started speaking up, sharing real-world insights from my little startup. Slowly, the professor started noticing me. Head nods in class, research project invitations, and soon classmates were asking my opinion on their assignments. The girl who felt invisible at home was becoming a recognized voice in the department. As my academic life finally took off, my relationship with Dylan remained polite but distant. He'd occasionally text me invites to finance club events, but I always declined. My work schedule was non-negotiable. We talked, but our conversations were shallow, carefully avoiding the massive difference in our college experiences. Then one day, Dylan moved out and left behind a few boxes of old junk. I stumbled upon his high school diary. A page written during freshman year stopped my heart. I accidentally deleted Natalie's code folder when I borrowed her laptop today. She's going to hate me. But if I tell Mom and Dad, they'll stop me from seeing her. I just wanted her to stop staying up so late. I flipped to another entry, written after I won the coding award. She did it. The new code is even better than the old one. I still can't tell the truth. I'm such a coward. I closed the journal, reeling. Wait, It wasn't malice, it was never a calculated attack. He was just a confused kid, trapped between parental loyalty and misguided, immature pity for his sister. But, whether intentional or not, the scar from that incident was real. It was etched into every line of my code and every crack in my trust. The distance was even clearer in their communication. They called Dylan every week, their voices warm and genuinely interested. For me, it was only major holidays or family emergencies. I still remember Thanksgiving that year. I couldn't afford the ticket home. Mom's text read, "The whole family missed you at dinner, but I know you're busy with your projects." That ellipsis said everything. To them, my projects were an irrelevant distraction, not worth sacrificing a family dinner for. I refused to let that indifference drag me down. Instead, every slight fueled the fire. I consistently made the departmental honors list, won academic awards, and was invited to present at a local startup conference. There, I showcased my optimization software, the same tool that helped the bakery and a local laundromat near campus significantly boost their efficiency. Each small win wasn't just a career step, it was a silent validation. My path was just as valuable as Dylan's, maybe more so. And I was going to keep walking it, whether they watched or not. Late junior year, I brought the software to a conference. 2 investors rejected me for being too young. On the third try, my meticulous growth projection spreadsheet finally persuaded a small investor, landing me my first seed funding. I spent 3 months debugging the code at night, sleeping 4 hours a day to fine-tune the algorithm. It helped a local laundromat boost efficiency by 15%, cementing the investor's belief. I hired 2 data science students part-time, turning textbook knowledge into real-world growth. Then, Professor Larson nominated me for the Entrepreneurial Excellence Scholarship, which covered my entire senior year tuition. "You earned this through extraordinary effort," he said when I received the award. "Your story embodies the entrepreneurial spirit this university strives for." For the first time since starting college, I felt the crushing financial weight lift. The future I dreamed about in the back of that bakery was becoming real through sheer, continuous effort. What I didn't know was that my success story was quietly spreading throughout the data science department. As I focused on survival and growth, the seeds I'd planted were blossoming. My final year began with momentum I could never have imagined. My startup now served 12 recurring clients and employed 3 part-time students. The software got a shout-out in a local startup magazine, building my professional reputation outside of school. In November, Professor Larson came to me with an unexpected opportunity. "The National Student Business Innovation Competition is taking submissions," he said. "First prize is $40,000 in funding and investor access. I think your software model, focusing on small businesses, has a real shot." I spent weeks fine-tuning the business plan and practicing the pitch. The competition stage was where I could prove everything. But would the spotlight be bright enough to pierce the wall of my family's indifference? After 3 increasingly rigorous rounds, I made the final stage of the National Student Tech Innovation Competition, set for March, just 2 months before graduation. The irony was sharp. As my career was soaring, Dylan was hitting his first academic wall. His mandatory finance senior thesis required a level of research and discipline he'd never had to cultivate. Years of relying on innate talent and parental cushioning left him completely unprepared for this genuine challenge. One late Friday night in October, I heard an urgent, unexpected knock at my apartment door. I opened it to find Dylan standing there, eyes bloodshot, clutching his laptop and a stack of printed papers. "Nat, I'm failing my thesis," he confessed, his voice frantic. "Professor Thompson said my entire methodology is wrong and I have 5 weeks to restart from scratch, or I won't graduate." Seeing the desperation in his face, I felt a familiar, complicated conflict, even as I was updating my budget spreadsheet nightly in preparation for the national competition. One part of me, the wounded, resentful part, thought, this is justice for years of favoritism. But the other part realized this was a chance to finally move past the pain. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Let's see what you've got." That night was the first of many study sessions. Helping Dylan, I realized the years of self-teaching and strict time management gave me the exact skills he lacked. My research experience with Professor Larson proved invaluable, as I walked him through proper research methodology. As we worked, something unexpected happened. We started talking. Really talking, maybe for the first time ever. "How do you do all this?" Dylan asked one night. "Startup, straight A's, research. I can barely handle this thesis with a clear schedule." I told him about the brutal shifts, the financial pressure, and the constant calculations just to stay afloat. Dylan listened, his expression growing astonished. "I had no idea," he whispered. "Mom and Dad always said you were fine." "Fine is relative," I replied. "I worked almost 30 hours a week the first few years, studied full-time, skipped meals, lacked sleep. Zero social life." "Why didn't you say anything?" he asked. His question showed me his complete innocence. What difference would it have made? Would Mom and Dad suddenly decide I was worth investing in? The conversation was a turning point. As Dylan recognized the fundamental unfairness that shaped our lives, he became an unlikely ally. He started refusing expensive gifts from our parents, saying he wanted to pull his own weight like I did. By December, our weekly sessions had become a genuine bond. Dylan's thesis was finally getting on track, and he began to appreciate the discipline he'd never had. Meanwhile, my senior project attracted the attention of the university administration. Dean Thompson, head of the data science department, invited me to her office in January. "Your journey at Rockridge is truly remarkable, Carter," she began. "From financing your own tuition to building a successful startup while excelling academically, that's a story we want to celebrate." She explained the school chose one outstanding senior each year to be the commencement speaker. "We want you to represent data science this year," she said. "Your story embodies the entrepreneurial spirit and determination we want to inspire in all students." The chance to speak at graduation, publicly declaring my achievements to my parents and the entire university community, felt like the culmination of everything. I accepted immediately. What I didn't know was that Dean Thompson had planned more than just one speech. When March arrived, the tech competition became my focus. My presentation to the judges combined everything I learned about resilience, resource optimization, and creating value from constraints. When they announced I won first prize, I felt a validation that went far beyond the money and recognition. I had turned my greatest challenges into my greatest competitive advantage. But the success didn't stop there. In the final months of college, a large company tried to sabotage my fledgling startup. I won the client back, and my original investor doubled my funding. My parents sent a late invitation to Dylan's lavish graduation party, but I declined, choosing to focus on my wins and my future. On graduation day, I stood on the Rockridge stage, speaking as the most outstanding entrepreneurial graduate. My parents sat in the audience, looking stunned, likely never having imagined me in that position. What they didn't know was that earlier that morning, I had signed the contract to purchase a 60% stake in the company where Dylan once interned, the very company that had rejected me years ago for lack of practical experience. They didn't know that since sophomore year, after their rejection, I had secretly tracked and analyzed their public financial data. 4 years of accumulated startup profits, prize money, and my first salary from Horizon Data were finally enough to execute the plan, acquiring small batches of stock on the market discreetly until I hit the 60% threshold. It wasn't an impulse decision. It was a carefully calculated 4-year investment. The local magazine ran a front-page story about my win, complete with a photo of me accepting the cup and the large check. I sent a copy to Aunt May, and she called, her voice choked with pride. "I always knew you were special," she said. "Now, all of Des Moines sees it too." My parents, typically, never mention the article or the award. Their silence no longer surprised me. 3 weeks before graduation, my parents arrived in Des Moines to help Dylan prepare. They rented a big house for the extended family to attend his elaborate party. I received a perfunctory invitation, clearly an afterthought. "We thought you were busy with your work," Mom explained when I pointed out being excluded from the family pre-graduation dinner. "But you can come if you have time." Their indifference stung, but the pain was duller now. My self-worth no longer hinged on their approval. The afternoon before graduation, Aunt May arrived with a special gift, an embroidered graduation stole carrying the line that sustained me through my darkest days. "Diamonds are made under pressure," she said, her eyes glistening. Wear this with pride. You earned it. That evening, at the graduation rehearsal, Dean Thompson pulled me aside, giving me a mysterious smile. Everything is ready for tomorrow, she said. Be prepared for a slightly lengthy introduction before your speech. When I asked what she meant, she just winked. There are some surprises worth waiting for. Afterward, the extended family gathered at a luxurious restaurant in downtown Des Moines. Aunts, uncles, and cousins crowded around tables pushed together to fit everyone. My parents sat in the center, enthusiastically talking about Dylan's achievements and his post-graduation plans. Uncle Henry, my mother's brother, unexpectedly interrupted. What about Natalie? I heard she won a major tech competition. Dad waved his hand dismissively, his voice condescending. Oh, Natalie's busy with her little projects. Very entrepreneurial, right? The contemptuous tone showed that in Dad's eyes, my accomplishments were still inferior to Dylan's traditional path. I caught Dylan's eye across the table and saw him look slightly embarrassed, as if he had just realized the lifelong unfairness he had benefited from. After the dinner, Aunt May pulled my parents aside in the restaurant lobby. Although I couldn't hear a word, Dad's tense posture and defensive gestures said it all. Aunt May was scolding them for underestimating me for too long. When I got back to my apartment that night, a strange sense of calm washed over me. Tomorrow would be the culmination of 3 years of relentless effort, and regardless of how my family treated me, I had proven my worth to myself, and that was the most important thing. Before the new day began, I visited Aunt May one last time. She was frail, lying in bed, but her eyes still lit up when she saw me. You came, she whispered, her hand trembling as she opened a drawer. I have a gift for you. Inside the old envelope was a $5,000 check and a small, scribbled note. Grandma's ring money, plus 4 years of savings. Buy the rest of the shares, my dear. Now you have 60%. I hugged Aunt May, unable to hold back my tears. How did you know I was collecting shares? I always watch over you, she smiled weakly, her thin hand gently stroking my hair. Wear this stole tomorrow. I will try to make it. The next morning, the sky was bright and clear, as if celebrating for me. I woke up early, unable to sleep from excitement mixed with nervousness. Today didn't just mark a degree. It was the validation of the path I had chosen. My phone lit up with a text from Dylan. Hey sis, congrats grad. See you at the robbing area. Proud of you. That simple message warmed my heart. Our relationship seemed to have moved a little closer. From two siblings distant because of family favoritism, we were now starting to build a real friendship. After a light breakfast, I put on my new dress under the graduation gown, choosing elegant shoes for my most confident steps. As I put on Aunt May's embroidered stole, the one soaked with my tears last night, I fully felt the success. 3 years ago, my parents asserted I wasn't worth the investment. Today, I was graduating not only with honors, but with a rising startup and national recognition. The journey was difficult, but the woman who emerged from it was stronger than I had ever imagined. Mia, my close roommate, insisted on driving me to school. On the way, she laughed and said, I'm going to be your #1 fan today. And I wondered, no, I knew, what awaited me at graduation. It wasn't just a diploma, not just congratulations. It was the final acknowledgement, the moment I could look my parents straight in the eye and say without words, I did it. Under that gown, I carried not only Aunt May's love, but also the power to change the destiny of my entire family. And more importantly, the power to choose the person I wanted to become. Gown flowing, I walked onto the Rockridge stage, where all eyes were focused and all truths were about to be revealed. Here's the little boss's carriage, Mia teased, her smile radiant, her eyes sparkling with genuine pride, as she opened the door of her old sedan, the hinges squeaking in the early morning air. No bus today, only VIP, she said, the smell of freshly cut grass and the aroma of coffee from her takeout cup mingling. The Rockridge campus was a vibrant scene, families in their best attire crowded between buildings, holding maps, phones raised for photos, the sound of children's cheers echoing across the green lawn under the golden sun. I spotted Dylan immediately, his familiar smile standing out in the crowd, his red honor cord gleaming in the light. He rushed over and hugged me tightly, his breath smelling of morning coffee, the unexpected embrace making my heart race. Sis, I I can't believe we did it, he said, adjusting my graduation cap, his eyes shining. I just barely made it, and you conquered the whole world, he laughed, his surprisingly humble tone catching me off guard. Everyone has their own path, Dylan, I replied, smiling, my hand lightly touching Aunt May's embroidered stole, feeling the warmth of the gift. The ceremony coordinator, in a gray suit, began lining graduates up alphabetically, the sound of shoes scuffing on the brick patio, placing Dylan and me close together in the procession. As I found my place, I saw Dean Thompson approaching, her high heels clicking on the wooden floor, her gaze determined, a faint scent of vanilla perfume passing by. Miss Carter, she said, pulling me aside, her hand gently touching my shoulder, her voice low and warm. Just confirming. After the degree conferral, the president will announce the special honors. She lowered her voice, her eyes twinkling. You'll be the first to go up and speak. And there are a few more surprises, too. I asked for details, my heart pounding, but she just winked, her smile mysterious. Just let things unfold. Get ready to shine. The stream of graduates moved into the auditorium, the traditional music swelling, the dim light from the high windows shining down, making the black gowns shimmer. Through the windows I saw the audience, hundreds of family members and friends filling the large hall, the sounds of conversation and occasional cheers, a few children waving from a distance. As the procession moved down the center aisle, gowns billowing, I scanned the family section and saw my parents in the front row, a prime spot. Their eyes followed Dylan up ahead, full of pride. Right beside them, Aunt May sat bolt upright. Her gaze met mine, a look of such unwavering, strange warmth, like a solid anchor in the vast crowd. As our eyes connected, she nodded, a small gesture filled with powerful love and belief that made my chest warm. The ceremony unfolded with speeches about the future and intellectual responsibility, punctuated by brief static from the mic and scattered applause from the audience. I listened with half an ear, rehearsing my speech, my heart hammering, my hands gripping the edge of my gown, feeling the rough fabric beneath my fingers. Finally, the degree conferral began, with departments rising, crossing the stage to receive their certificates, and shaking hands with university leadership amidst rousing applause. When my name was called, Aunt May's sharp whistle cut through the polite applause, ringing like a bell in the wind, making me smile shakily. Dylan, on his way back to his seat, gave me a thumbs up, his smile radiant under the stage lights, his eyes showing genuine support. After the degree conferral, Chancellor Grayson approached the podium, tall and imposing, his voice filling the auditorium as he adjusted the microphone with a slight squeak. Before we conclude the ceremony, we have a few special honors, he said, his gaze sweeping over the silent, expectant crowd. First, I invite Natalie Carter, Data Science, to speak on behalf of this year's graduating class. I walked onto the stage, my shoes clicking on the wooden floor, my breath catching. For the first time today, my parents looked straight at me, clear astonishment on their faces. Dad squinted. Mom bit her lip, clearly not expecting their less promising daughter to be so honored. Standing at the podium, I took a deep breath, my hands gripping Aunt May's stole, feeling the embroidered words, "Diamonds are made under pressure. Give me strength." 4 years ago, I came to Rockridge with the fierce belief that an education must be earned, I began, my voice echoing, slightly shaky but steadily growing firm. Today, I stand here, having worked 28 hours a week alongside a full course load, built a startup supporting small businesses, and graduated with the highest honors. I spoke of resilience, finding strength in adversity, and redefining success, my eyes finding Aunt May's proud gaze. Without mentioning my parents, I touched on the pain of being underestimated and the power of proving the doubters wrong. The greatest gift from Rockridge wasn't the books or the lectures, I continued, my voice low, the auditorium silent. It was realizing that the limits others place on you are not your own limits. Each of us can surpass expectations and carve out our own success. When I finished, the applause was deafening. Chancellor Grayson stepped back up to the podium, his posture tall, his hand adjusting the microphone. "Thank you, Miss Carter, for those inspiring words," he said, his voice resonating through the now silent auditorium. "And now, I am deeply honored to announce several special distinctions, reflecting the excellence Rockridge always strives for." He paused, his eyes scanning the paper in his hand, the stage lights illuminating his serious face. First, the data science department has unanimously selected Natalie Carter as this year's valedictorian, graduating with a perfect 4.0 GPA, while simultaneously building a startup now valued in the six figures. The murmurs of awe spread through the audience like a gentle wind across the lawn. I stood motionless beside the podium, my heart hammering, completely unprepared for this public recognition, my hands still tightly clutching Aunt May's embroidered stole. The chancellor continued, his voice ringing clearly. Furthermore, Miss Carter is the champion of the National Student Tech Innovation Competition, bringing unprecedented honor to our entrepreneurship program. The applause swelled, stronger now, like waves crashing ashore. I stole a glance at my parents. Their expressions shifted from astonishment to absolute shock. Dad's eyes were wide, and Mom tightly gripped the hem of her dress. What many people do not know, Chancellor Grayson continued, his voice cutting through the air like a knife, is that Miss Carter achieved these extraordinary accomplishments while self-financing her tuition, working multiple jobs, building a startup, and maintaining academic excellence without any financial support from her family. The revelation rattled the auditorium. Murmurs intensified, turning into gasps. My parents in the front row seemed to shrink. Mom's shoulders stiffened, and Dad bowed his head as if trying to avoid the gaze of the audience. I am thrilled to announce, the Chancellor continued, that Miss Carter has been hired by Horizon Data Solutions, one of the nation's premier data analytics firms. And on top of that, her entrepreneurial journey will be featured on the cover of the next issue of Modern Entrepreneur magazine with a highlight on the young, entrepreneurial star. The auditorium exploded. The audience rose to their feet, the applause thunderous, drowning out the sound of my own heart. I saw my parents turn pale, their faces shifting from shock to horror, realizing the entire room now knew they had refused to support the daughter, who was now the university's most outstanding graduate. From his spot among the graduates, Dylan applauded wildly, tears glistening in his eyes, his smile wide, as if he were the one being honored. In the family seating, Aunt May remained seated, her frail hands gripping the chair as her knees would not allow her to stand quickly. But her proud smile was so bright it could have lit the entire hall. As the applause finally subsided, Chancellor Grayson made the final announcement in a warm, resonant voice. In honor of Miss Carter's extraordinary example, the University Board has established the Natalie Carter Resilience Scholarship, providing financial support to students who overcome adversity to pursue their education. Just then, from the family seating area, Uncle Henry, my father's brother, stood up, his voice cutting across the solemn atmosphere. "Excuse me, I have a few words to say. As Natalie's uncle, I have witnessed everything." The entire auditorium suddenly fell silent. I asked her parents, James and Linda, to stand up, not to congratulate her, but to admit before 2,000 people here, you were wrong about your daughter. My mother turned ashen, and Dad gripped the chair arm so tightly his knuckles were white. Under the gaze of the entire hall, they stood up, slowly and shakily. They didn't say a word, their silence and expressions said it all. I stood on the stage, looking down at my trembling parents. 100 conflicting emotions swelled in me: satisfaction, pain, and even pity. This was what I had always dreamed of, them admitting their mistake in public. But when the moment actually arrived, I felt a strange, hollow emptiness. Then Aunt May slowly rose. She walked toward my parents, not to criticize them further, but to steady my mother, who was swaying. Aunt May's gesture hit me like a punch to the gut. Was I becoming the tormentor, just like they had been to me? "Enough," I whispered, but the mic on my lapel was still on. My voice carried clearly across the auditorium, gentle but firm. "Thank you, Uncle Henry. But please let my parents sit down." The symbolic victory was complete. Not only had I succeeded despite their lack of belief, but I had also left a permanent mark. A scholarship that would help others face challenges just as I had. As I returned to my spot among the graduates, the applause still echoed. Dylan squeezed my hand and whispered, "You were amazing. They were terribly wrong about you." The rest of the ceremony passed like a dream. When the ceremony ended, graduates dispersed to find their families, the sound of shoes scuffing on the wooden floor, the scent of perfume and fresh flowers lingering in the air. I saw my parents standing next to Aunt May, their usual confident demeanor replaced by an awkward stiffness. Dad's shoulders were rigid, and Mom nervously smoothed her hair as if trying to hide the tension on her face. When I finally reached them, Dad forced a strained smile, his tone falsely jovial. "Well, that was quite a surprise, Natalie. You certainly kept that quiet from the family." That comment, as if I had intentionally hidden my success rather than them simply never having truly asked, might once have shattered my heart. Now, it was just a passing breeze, unable to shake the peace I had found within myself. "Not at all," I replied, my voice cold, staring straight into his eyes without blinking. "I have always been myself," I said, my tone calm but sharp, meeting their gaze directly. "You just weren't paying attention." Before they could reply, Dylan stepped forward, putting his arm around my shoulder in a clear act of solidarity, his sports cologne wafting past. "Everyone is talking about Natalie's speech and her success," Dylan said loudly, his voice more resonant than necessary, deliberately. His eyes didn't leave our parents. "It's amazing she achieved all that without support. Isn't it, Mom and Dad? I wonder if she had gotten just a fraction of the investment I did, how far she would have flown." My mother flinched, her shoulders tightening as if struck, her eyes darting away as Dylan's words hit the core wound of their favoritism. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation at home," Dad said curtly, clearly uncomfortable being scrutinized in public, his hand tightening on the edge of his suit jacket. "Actually," I replied, my voice level, "I have a party this afternoon with my startup team and mentors. They were my real support system these past 4 years, and I don't want to miss it." Aunt May stepped forward, her thin hand clasping mine, her eyes bright with determination under the pale sunlight. "I'm going with you," she declared, her voice resolute. "I want to meet the wonderful people who saw what your parents failed to see." Her blunt words hung in the air, a sharp cut in the suffocating silence. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine regret in Mom, her lips pressed tightly, her eyes blinking rapidly as if trying to hide her emotion. "We are very proud of you, of course," Mom said, her voice weak, a futile, belated effort. "Thank you," I replied, my voice composed yet cold. I stood straight, Aunt May's embroidered stole feeling like a shield. But I have learned that external validation is not necessary for success. Today is not about pleasing you. Today is about celebrating the journey I took without that support. As Aunt May and I turned to leave, Dylan unexpectedly spoke up, his voice firm. "I'm going too." He stepped away from our parents and stood beside me, looking like he had just cut an invisible cord. The sight of the two siblings leaving, forging their own paths beyond narrow expectations, leaving our parents standing isolated amidst the chattering families, was like their perfect family portrait, shattering under an undeniable truth. The post-graduation party in the data science department lounge was the exact opposite of the family tension earlier. Professor Larson had arranged an elegant reception, with tables laden with mini sandwiches, sparkling glasses of juice, and congratulatory banners hanging high, warm yellow light illuminating the polished wood floor. Dylan looked around, eyes wide, and whispered, "This is totally different from the finance department's party. Everyone here seems like they actually know each other." "This department is my home," I explained, my voice soft. "These people saw me, truly saw me, when Mom and Dad couldn't." Mia rushed over and hugged me tightly, her hair smelling of jasmine shampoo, before turning to shake hands with Aunt May and Dylan, her smile bright. "I've heard so much about you two," she said, her voice warm. "The amazing aunt who always believed, and the brother who finally woke up." Dylan blushed but laughed, taking the gentle tease. "Better late than never, I hope," he replied, scratching his head. Dean Thompson approached, holding a sparkling glass of water, her fitted black dress shining under the light. "The woman of the hour," she said, her smile radiant, offering a glass to us. "And this must be Aunt May, the one who believed in her from the start." As they chatted, I watched Dylan observe the support network I had built. People who valued me for my genuine accomplishments, not preconceived notions of potential. The contrast with my parents' conditional recognition was stark, like light and shadow. An elegant woman in a gray suit approached, her gait confident, her hair in a neat bun. "Miss Carter," she said, her voice warm and deep. "I'm Sarah Mitchell, founder of Horizon Data Solutions. Your presentation at the tech competition was impressive. We're thrilled you accepted our offer. Thank both you and the firm for the opportunity, I replied, shaking her hand, feeling her firm grip. I'm excited to work with the team. Sarah smiled. With your outstanding academics and real-world experience, you're exactly who we look for. Not many new graduates have built a successful startup from scratch. When she walked away to greet other guests, Dylan gasped, his eyes wide. You didn't tell me you were working for Horizon Data. That's one of the biggest data companies in the country. I smiled lightly. Things moved quickly after the competition. The pay is pretty good too, probably more than Dad. Dylan nodded, his gaze thoughtful, as if seeing me from a new perspective. The party continued with speeches from professors and department awards, the clinking of glasses mixing with laughter. In the warm glow of the celebratory party, I shone amongst the people who genuinely believed in me. But Dylan's new gaze only made the coming family dinner more tense. Would this be a reconciliation or a new battle? I stood on the small podium in the Data Science Lounge, receiving the Outstanding Entrepreneurship Award from Professor Larson. His eyes sparkled as he recounted my journey, from a determined freshman to a startup owner and the department's star. His voice trembled slightly when mentioning the nights I stayed up debugging code. Applause rang out, warm like a wave, interspersed with the clinking of glasses from the table laden with mini sandwiches and sparkling juice. Throughout the afternoon, I guided Aunt May around the lounge, introducing her to the people who had supported me. The dedicated advising professor, classmates who became partners, and school staff who helped me through moments when I almost couldn't pay tuition. Each person shared a memory. The time I presented the bakery project to save my exam, or how I helped the department win the regional coding competition, the scent of coffee wafting from their cups. I had no idea. Dylan whispered after the 10th introduction, his eyes wide, his hair falling over his forehead under the warm yellow light. All these people admire you so much. In the middle of the party, my phone vibrated, the screen lighting up with a message from Mom. The family is gathering at the rented house for dinner at 6 p.m. Come, we want to celebrate both our graduates. I showed the message to Dylan and Aunt May, my finger lightly tracing the embroidered stole that read, "Diamonds are made under pressure." What do you think, Aunt May? I asked, my gaze searching. Aunt May scoffed gently, her silver hair gleaming under the light, her voice sharp. Playing the role of proud parents now is a bit late, isn't it? Dylan shrugged, his voice hesitant, scratching his head. They're trying in their own way, maybe. No need to decide hastily, I said, putting my phone away, taking a deep breath of the toasted bread smell from the buffet table. Let's just enjoy this moment first. As the party was winding down, Professor Larson approached, followed by a school photographer, a camera dangling, a flash briefly catching the light from afar. Modern Entrepreneur magazine wants to take a photo of you with your family for the cover story, he said, his smile warm. Are they here? The question caused the atmosphere to dip, like a misplaced low note. My aunt and brother are here, I replied carefully, my hand touching Aunt May's stole, feeling the stability of the gift. My parents are elsewhere. Professor Larson nodded, his eyes understanding, his voice gentle. The people who truly lift you up are your family. Let's take a photo of the three of you. The photographer arranged us in front of the department emblem, the light illuminating the carved logo on the wall. Aunt May stood in the middle, her smile radiant, her hands on my and Dylan's shoulders, both of us in our graduation gowns, my stole standing out like a small flame. When I left the lounge, Dean Thompson handed me a business card, the paper shimmering silver. The Rockridge MBA admissions director asked me to give you this, she said, winking. They want to discuss a full scholarship if you consider continuing your studies while working. The opportunities were unfolding, like doors I had never dared to dream of, completely contrary to the future my parents hadn't even bothered to imagine for me. Should we go to the family dinner? I asked as I got into Mia's car, the sunset blazing red on the horizon, cool wind blowing through my hair. Aunt May took my hand, her grip frail yet warm. The decision is yours, darling. You owe them nothing. She paused, her eyes twinkling with thought. But letting them see who you have become, not because of them, but because of yourself, is also valuable. Dylan nodded, a slight smile on his face, his voice teasing. Plus, I want to see Uncle Henry question why they never mentioned your startup or your awards. The decision was made. We drove to the rented house, the car tires crunching on the gravel drive, the smell of barbecue and roasted potatoes wafting from the kitchen window. As we stepped inside, the conversation stopped abruptly, then erupted into hugs and well wishes as cousins and aunts rushed to congratulate me and Dylan, laughter echoing through the crowded living room. Mom emerged from the kitchen, her hair hastily smoothed, her usual confident demeanor replaced by awkwardness, her hands clutching her apron. Natalie, you made it, she said, forcing a smile, but her eyes clearly showed her tension, as if she feared I would turn away. Dinner is almost ready. Dad approached, his voice disingenuous, patting my shoulder harder than necessary. Here are my 2 successful graduates, he announced loudly, as if he had been bragging about me all along, the scent of wine on his breath. Natalie, why didn't you tell us about the big job at Horizon Data? The audacity of the question after years of indifference stunned me. My breath hitched in my throat, and my hand tightened on the edge of my gown. Before I could answer, Uncle Henry interjected, his voice blunt, holding a can of beer. Perhaps because you never asked her what she was doing for 4 years, James. At least not at any gathering I was at. The room fell into awkward silence, Dad's face flushing red with a mix of shame and anger, his grip tightening on his wine glass. We always supported both our children, Dad said defensively, avoiding eye contact. Financially supported? Aunt Susan asked, her voice innocent but sharp as a knife, setting a plate of rolls on the table. Because the chancellor made it clear, Natalie self-financed her tuition while building a startup. Mom quickly cut in, her voice rushed, smoothing her hair. We had limited resources. We had to make difficult choices. Natalie has always been very independent. Independent because she was forced to be, not because she wanted to be. Aunt May interrupted, her voice razor sharp, her eyes blazing like fire, her hands gripping the chair arm. Don't rewrite history just because her success is now inconvenient for you. The air grew heavy, as if the entire room were holding its breath, the dim light reflecting off my parents' pale faces. The tense atmosphere hung like before a storm, the dim lights highlighting the embarrassed eyes. Aunt Susan and Uncle Henry exchanged glances, their forks paused midair, while my parents tried to maintain composure under the unexpected scrutiny from their relatives. Dylan, to everyone's astonishment, spoke up, his voice clear, without hesitation. Dad, Mom, it's time to admit it. You always favored me, invested everything in me, and gave Natalie nothing. He looked straight at them, his eyes shining under the light, his hair falling over his forehead. You were wrong about her potential. Today, everyone sees it. Mom blinked rapidly, tears glistening, unsure if they were from regret or shame at being exposed in front of the family, her hand gripping the tablecloth. We didn't mean to, she started, her voice weak, her gaze wandering. Impact matters more than intent, I cut in, my voice calm, my hand touching Aunt May's embroidered stole. Diamonds are made under pressure. Your choices shaped my life, regardless of what you intended. Dad, unaccustomed to being challenged, tried to regain control, his voice strained, tightening his grip on the wine glass. This is not the time to dredge things up. We are celebrating. Exactly, Aunt Susan chimed in, her voice sharp, setting down the bread basket, the slight clink of porcelain against wood ringing out. We are celebrating Natalie's extraordinary success, achieved without support from either of you. A rather remarkable topic, wouldn't you say? The dinner continued stiffly, the sound of cutlery against plates interspersed with disjointed conversation, the faint scent of baking apple pie wafting from the kitchen. The relatives, now looking at me with new eyes, asked about my startup, my job at Horizon Data, and my future plans. Every achievement I mentioned, the 20% increase in bakery revenue, winning the National Tech Award, visibly discomforted my parents, their shoulders stiffening as they realized the magnitude of what they had missed. By dessert, the family dynamic had fundamentally shifted. My parents, once the center of power at gatherings, were now under scrutiny. The daughter they viewed as less promising had proven her exceptional worth, shaking their credibility. Relatives departed, hugging me warmly, offering business cards and suggesting professional connections, their shoes crunching on the gravel outside beneath the dim streetlights. The late recognition, though slow, was warm, like a small fire against the cold night. When only the immediate family remained, Dad attempted a reconciliation, his voice softer but forced. "Natalie, your mother and I talked, and we want to give you the down payment for an apartment near your company as a graduation gift." The offer, minuscule compared to Dylan's 4 years of tuition, might once have moved me. Now it felt almost insulting. "Thank you, but I don't need it," I replied, looking straight at him, my voice steady. "My starting salary at Horizon Data is $95,000 per year, plus bonuses. My living situation is fine." The figure, higher than Dad's own income, stunned him. His expression shifted from shock to disbelief, followed by a reluctant acknowledgement, his hand gripping the edge of the table. "Well," he said, trying to maintain composure, "you certainly proved yourself." "Yes," I replied, my shoulders relaxing, "but not to prove anything to anyone but myself." As we were getting ready to leave, Dylan pulled me aside, his eyes bright, whispering, "I'm staying with Aunt May for a few days before I move. Do you want to come along? Like a vacation with the people who truly matter." The simple yet profound invitation, a complete redefinition of family, made my eyes sting. "I'd love to," I whispered, squeezing his shoulder. As we walked out, leaving my parents hesitating at the door, their shadows cast long on the gravel by the light, I felt the lifelong burden vanish. The family I chose, Aunt May, Dylan, Mia, my mentors, were the ones who saw my worth from the beginning, and that was worth more than 1,000 belated acknowledgments. The months after graduation passed in a tranquility I had never known. I thought I had found my new rhythm. Work at Horizon Data, my startup steadily growing, and cozy dinners with Aunt May and Dylan. Until one cold March morning, when the doorbell of my new office at Horizon Data rang, and outside were Dylan's ashen face and the pleading, desperate eyes of my parents, a look I had never seen before. They had come, and the plea I had once only imagined on my graduation night was now right in front of me. The week after graduation, I moved into an apartment near Horizon Data, using my tech award bonus for the down payment, the scent of fresh paint lingering in the neat space. My startup continued, managed by a team of students, paid fairly, flexible hours, the quiet clatter of keyboards every afternoon. That original deal, the one I had quietly signed the morning of graduation to purchase a 60% stake in the company Dylan had interned at, was now a secret I kept, waiting for the right day to reveal it. But that secret now carried a tremendous moral weight. That company was on the brink of bankruptcy. Dylan, after all his self-effort, was about to lose everything and drag 50 innocent employees down with him. My parents, now old and regretful, came to plead with me one last time. My startup was reinvesting, and Horizon Data had strict regulations on capital use. The first-generation success scholarship fund was the only source I could freely use, and the one I had promised not to touch for any personal reason. Saving the family meant forgiving the people who once told me I was only good enough to be a waitress for life. Not saving them meant 50 people losing their jobs, and dozens of kids like my past self losing their opportunity. On my desk, the bailout contract lay next to the list of eager eyes waiting. I picked up Aunt May's old embroidered stole, gently tracing the faded inscription, "Diamonds are made under pressure." This time, the pressure wasn't about being abandoned, it was about choosing to become the person they used to be, or to become the person Aunt May believed in. For the first time in my life, I was no longer the abandoned child. I was the one holding the power to decide who would be saved and who would pay the price. After 7 days of struggle, I made the final decision. A decision I knew wouldn't please everyone, but it was the only choice I could live with myself. Before signing the contract, I opened the last envelope Aunt May had left me. Inside wasn't money, but a certificate for 10% of Chen Capital Partners shares in her name, purchased 6 years ago. It turned out Aunt May had been secretly buying shares alongside me since the days I was scrambling to work multiple jobs. The anonymous donor who sent money through Miss Wilson that year was her. She never told me because she wanted me to believe I did it all myself. Now, with 70% of the shares in my hands, I finally understood. The person who saved me from beginning to end wasn't me, but Aunt May. But every decision has its price. To save the company, I had to pour in all my savings from the past 4 years. My budding startup would have to be put on hold, and the charity fund named after my aunt couldn't be launched immediately. And most importantly, I had to work with Dylan every day, facing the person who once broke my heart. Aunt May once said, "Sometimes the greatest victory is not getting what you want, but remaining the person you don't want to become." So I saved Dylan's company, but in my own way. The contract was signed with clear terms. I purchased 60% of the shares, giving Dylan 10 years and a clear roadmap to buy back half if he genuinely learned his lesson in responsibility. I established the Aunt May Carter Foundation, funded by 20% of the annual profits, where my parents would work unpaid, directly witnessing how every dollar helped young boys and girls whose dreams had been scorned. Dylan remained the CEO, but under the supervision of an independent advisory board and mandatory CEO training. And at the first shareholder meeting in front of all the employees, my parents stood up. My father's voice was trembling. My mother held a pre-written paper, but the admission was clear. Technology, the very thing we once thought was child's play, saved the family company. 7 years later, that small flame has become a torch. From my small office at Horizon Data, my career exploded like a perfectly optimized algorithm. From the youngest director of analytics to the acquisition and revival of small tech startups. On my desk, among multi-million-dollar contracts, there is still the old photo frame, Aunt May and the little girl typing away on a rickety old computer. It reminds me that everything started with a warm hand placed on a shoulder, and now I have the power to become that hand for others. I didn't easily forgive, but I learned that the most glorious victory is not pushing those who once scorned you down a cliff, but rising so high that you can decide whether or not to throw them a lifeline. And more importantly, if one day your daughter comes to you with a dream that the world scoffs at as not worth a dime, will you teach her to hold a torch and burn away the past, or to hold the flame and light the way forward? If you too have had to walk alone through the darkness, I invite you most sincerely to subscribe to this channel. Every new video is a time for us to heal together, to turn old wounds into light for others who are still lonely out there. Share your choice in the comments below. Forgiveness, conditional justice, or letting go. I believe each of us has our own way to turn the tables on our lives. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next installment of this journey of rising up.